and secretary for the Florida Surveying and Mapping Society. It's a proclamation from the commission, and I'll read it, so my Vanna White gives it over to, But this proclamation obviously is signed by the chairman. It's for all of us, and it's signed by the mayor. Whereas Miami-Dade County is proud to honor professionals steadfast in their commitment to the safety and well-being of our residents. And by the way, there's been a lot of disputes in the courts about, so thank God we have surveyors, right? George Washington was a surveyor, for those who don't know. But professional land surveyors play a critical role in the development, construction, and maintenance of communities by providing precise measurements and mapping that establish property boundaries and support infrastructure projects. And the work of land surveyors attributes to the protection of property rights, the responsible planning of land development, and the safe construction of roads, utilities, and public facilities. And modern land surveyors utilize advanced technology, historical research, and scientific methods to ensure the accurate documentation and measurement of land, helping guide the continued growth of our municipalities and the county. And National Surveyors Week is celebrated annually to recognize the vital work performed by land surveyors and to raise awareness of the profession's role in shaping our communities while highlighting their essential contributions to the orderly development and prosperity to the residents of Miami-Dade County. So it is resolved by Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, who is our mayor, and Chairman Anthony Rodriguez, and us as the members of the County Commission, to declare this National Surveyors Week, and thank you for everything you do.
There you go. I'm good, but congratulations. Here you go. As I represent a district where the plots are always wrong, so we're always relying on our surveyors.
We're both lawyers, so don't hold it against us.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Miami-Dade Florida Survey and Mapping Society chapter and Miami-Dade, I just want to say thank you for Commissioner Bermudez for sponsoring the proclamation. Thank you, Ms. Regalado, Commissioner Regalado, and the County Commission for approving this, and the Mayor. We're extremely grateful for this, and we really appreciate working with the county and everything you've done for us.
So now picture, you go in the middle.
You go in the middle.
You go in the middle. You get Commissioner bookends.
People in the back there. Don't photo bomb. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to do one more roll call just to be safe, and then we'll start the sunshine meeting. How's that? Well, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance also in the invocation, but go ahead and we'll do one more roll call to be safe in case the Oliver is in the house and he'd like to join us. Mr. Clerk, could you go ahead?
Sure thing. Commissioner Gilbert, Commissioner Regalado, Chairman Bermudez,
Present.
2 members present. We don't have a quorum.
Okay. Let's all rise and we'll have an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'm going to open up in a second the opportunity to be heard. I got a funny feeling that it's going to be consistent with our discussion item, which is the FOG regulation workshop, fats, oils, and grease. And I want to make those comments before and then give my colleague who has taken her time to be here today the opportunity to also comment on this. So I'm going to invert it. If you don't, Mr. Attorney and Mr. Clerk, I'm going to invert the process since we're having the sunshine. We've received, at least my office has received, and I think all of us probably have received so many emails, calls, concerns about this issue. And truthfully, it's a great concern, not only because of the landlord, but also the individuals who are leasing and opening up restaurants and properties here in Miami-Dade County. There's a lot of issues, and we're going to. Our purpose here is to hear from you, because I know it's tough to get out here at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday with South Florida traffic, which is another issue we have. But I thank you so much for taking the time, because I've heard some businesses that I don't know why they would even need a grease trap, but we're having to get grease traps. Landlords, malls that have trouble with kiosk and businesses that are trying to open within the malls. So I think we need to take a hard look at the criteria we're using to determine which restaurants and food establishments need to deal with FOG regulations. For example, if a business only bottles local honey, I don't understand, the process, why they would need a $100,000 grease trap, smoothies, etc. Look, and I'm going to let her speak for herself in a second, but I'm sure Commissioner Regalado shares the same sentiment. We are here to make life easier for our residents and our businesses in Miami-Dade County. There is no county without our residents and our businesses. And I know there's a consent decree, and I've talked to Roy, and I really appreciate Director Coley's open-minded approach to this process, because we do have a consent decree, but that doesn't mean that certain things can't be amended in that consent decree, and that there's not room in there to maybe do things to make it better. Our businesses and our residents are our customers. Before we go to the EPA, the FDEP, there are things we can obviously improve and talk about. One of the issues that there may be some immediate, and we'll talk about that also as we go along, because this process is not it's not something we want to finish today. You know that we have a report that will come back in 60 days, and hopefully we'll have legislation at that point. I know your problems are immediate. We're trying to do whatever we can as quickly as possible. I want to thank Manny Sid back there from the administration, also former mayor of Miami Lakes, for also helping us move forward on this issue. The policies and procedures also have been a problem. We need to communicate better with our businesses and departments, even within ourselves sometimes, because everybody that knows me knows I hate silos. The only silos I liked, Commissioner Regalado, was when I went to law school in Notre Dame. They have these big corn silos because it's very nice. But other than that, they don't. So I think, and there are going to be questions that we will have. Obviously, at least I will have. I'm assuming Commissioner Regalado will have also. But we're going to have this meeting because you're here and we want to hear from you. This, to me, is an example of an issue that needs to be dealt with to improve Miami-Dade County. Not only, like I said before, for our businesses, but also for our residents. And I'm going to tell you, I personally know of some businesses that have said, I'd rather go to Broward. And that can't happen. So we need to, at least from, I believe my colleague shares this sentiment, and most of our colleagues do. There have been co-sponsors of this bill this resolution that are not here, that I'm sure we can get their support, but we got to start moving it. And if we don't start moving, nothing will happen. It'll be business as usual. And at least for me, I don't want business as usual. Commissioner Regalado, before we start taking public comment, please go ahead. You've got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Ramirez, and thank you for having this meeting. We talked a little bit about this at our last meeting, and I think what we need to figure out is what is the best path forward with staff. So we want to hear more about the challenges that folks have encountered. We'll say it that way. I know that I've spoken to Derm and to Lourdes about it, and we're already kind of thinking about things that can be fixed immediately, and then what are some temporary fixes and what are some long-term fixes. And I'm glad that staff is here, specifically also Roy, so that we can kind of walk through what our options are, because I think everybody wants a resolution, right? One thing is to talk about it, and the other thing is what are our next steps? So this gives us an opportunity to really flesh out those next steps. And I'm here to listen to what folks have to say and to work with staff so that together we can make it easier for folks to do this work. I think, as I mentioned last time, the one size fits all may have been the solution in response to the consent decree, right? But I think we're at a point where we could probably figure out a few different paths for people. And I think there's been a huge investment in infrastructure. And I think this is a board that no longer, I'll say it this way, I'll be delicate about it. This is not a board that wants to push off infrastructure costs to businesses, right? I think that this is a board that is more interested in meeting folks halfway. And I think that that's the right thing. I think there was a time where the idea from the Board of County Commissioners was that the private sector would kind of do the heavy infrastructure lift. And that's not the best, right? And that clearly hasn't worked out. And I think in today's economy, as we see more and more restaurants fail, there needs to be course correction. So I think the timing is good. And I think the placement of this administration and this board is one that is open to that change, so that we can give people an opportunity to thrive. So thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Regalado, and thank you for those so timely words. And we are, I guess technically, can I call this reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard? I can do it, right? There's no rule that says I can't. We're going to do it, even though it's a sunshine meeting. How's that? Yeah?
It's a sunshine meeting, so it's entirely in your.
Oh, okay, perfect. So let's call it we're going to open it up, and I'm going to call up some of you that have filled out cards. And then Roy will go to you. I think somebody from the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority is also planning on being here, but they're not here yet. They're stuck in Miami-Dade County traffic. But anyways, it's just a joke. It's not that bad. I want all my transit friends to be happy. So we're going to call up those of you who have filled out a card. And if you haven't, I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak also at the end if you so choose. Let's begin by Mary Alford. And then we have Carlos Gazatua. And Thomas Conway. Those are the first three.
Good morning, and thank you, Commissioners. My name is Mary Alford. I'm here representing the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. We are here with a lot of our members, hoteliers and restaurateurs. Obviously, we appreciate and applaud the commissioners for taking a step and looking at this, listening to our gripes that we've had in the past years too. Me specifically, what I do is I help licensing. I do that paperwork. And even though that seems more administrative, what I have found since moving down to South Florida is Miami-Dade is a whole new ballgame. It is not like the rest of the state of Florida, and it's very different when it comes to handling with municipalities, the government entities, and then the state agencies too. And I try to bridge those together and that communication to keep it a simpler process for people to understand. We do want to say thank you again for just taking the opportunity to listen to our issues and finding solutions, and hope we can continue to partner with the Commission on being those solutions and finding a better, efficient way. Some of the items and the problems that we've experienced from our restaurateurs and hoteliers has specifically been, I'd like to address on the changes. So they're already existing, and there's a change in their process, whether it's just they're upgrading from beer and wine to add liquor to it, or they're changing something within the system. It could even be like their DBA name. Surprisingly, all of those have to go back through this process with their certificate of use, your GDO permit, the FOG review. All of it has to be redone to just make sure that everyone's in compliance. And again, these business owners are not trying to not comply. We want to be in compliance. That is our goal. It does get complicated, though, when it turns into weeks and weeks and weeks for what might be a simple upgrade, a simple change, or even just operating in the restaurant to make it more efficient, too.
Thank you, Ms. Alford. And I hope you'll continue to be a part of this process through the association.
Absolutely.
So me and Mary, Carlos Gazatua from Sergio's Restaurants, me and Mary work a lot together, and I think she highlighted some points. I might go a little longer, but I want to highlight that we should always look from pre-construction all the way down to existing restaurants or existing operators. So one of the first things from a pre-construction perspective is transparency, and that the properties for each property in the county should have a tag, and we should know with that property, is the grease trap compliant or not. So when the county has on the website, hey, if you're going to go into this property or buy into it, you're going to have to do certain things. So transparency from a landlord-tenant perspective, there needs to be some kind of communication. So it's not a he said, she said kind of thing. It should be communicated and full transparency. It benefits the tenants from an infrastructure before leasing. Landlords understand the required upgrades and faster permitting and fewer issues with the county and the restaurants. The permitting process right now, if a project receives a full review, approval for a grease trap intersetter, that approval should be automatically satisfied through the GDO, permit final review. We shouldn't be going back and forth. We should eliminate any duplicity that we see on the record from that process to reduce permit delays. That's one of the number one issues we have in the county, is that people are terrified to go into the permit review with Durham. So we should improve agency efficiencies and go through this redundant review. Now let's talk about solutions for existing restaurants with older grease traps. We should have, the county itself should have control of qualifying for variances if there's operational standards that are met. There should be a variance required that if the restaurants or shows that an existing grease trap is operational, that there's regular pump outs and service contracts. We can also use technology. There's new technology now that plasma and aeration can constantly clean the greases. You don't have to even clean the grease trap, believe it or not, for 6 months to a year. It's happening in Spain. It happens all over in different countries that they're doing this, that they're constantly cleaning. The number one issue we have in the county is that people aren't cleaning the grease traps. So then we're thinking about using solid waste, spending time and energy and money, taking this all the way to be broken down when we can be using restaurants as our own mini plants. So that way we pull out the grease into an oil tank. The restaurants can sell that oil tank to shipping yards for biodiesel fuel. It makes money for the restaurant. We reduce cost for the county with less information, and we get certification through the grease companies that are compliant, as well as the restaurants, to ensure that it's being cleaned. Thinking outside the box instead of just doing the same old, same old. Finally, administrative and enforcement reform. Before there's any major penalty, there should be a technical reviewer. We should be looking at the violation that's being issued. We should have a technical reviewer, because every property is different, correct and have a plan offer to do a correction plan. And if there's a compliance timeline, and only then, if there's no compliance, then there should be a penalty. This prevents unfair fines, encourages compliance. I'll give you an example of duplicity and violation that we just had last month, $1,500. My person who cleaned the grease trap uploaded his document that he cleaned the grease trap, but guess what? My office forgot to upload it. I don't know many other systems that two people have to upload the same document to show compliance, but I don't know why we're getting fined $1,500 for something that was already uploaded. It's just we forgot to upload. So duplicity in the system. And finally, the triggering of septic tanks and grease traps. Owners, we should need to review the full compliance review of this unnecessary disruption. Ownership changes, like someone got divorced and changed their last name but still the same owner, is still the same person. If it's a physical person and it's still the same, we should not consider them to be a different person. Okay, I think we all can agree on that. There's also restructuring in companies. Trusts are changed, same ownership, but they're doing this for tax purposes. That also is a trigger in our county that requires them to change the grease trap and have compliance. So corporate restructuring, same ownership, sale business, all these things should not trigger a change. And this is the same thing with the septic tanks. The simple message is, let's provide a balanced system that provides transparency, simplifying the permitting process from beginning to end, encourage technology as adoption, and ensure our environment continues to be compliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gazatua.
Mr.
Tom, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, that's a lot. Can we take up some of those? Because if not,
I heard septic tank, which was...
It's a trigger. It's a trigger.
That's a trigger, which we all agree on, but the trigger. But yeah, let's go ahead. We can talk a little bit about trigger.
If not, I'll just be taking notes like the.
Yeah, why don't we wait till everybody else comments, and then we can.
Okay, all right.
There's only about 6 more people.
I will take more notes then. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the many you said septic
In
tank.
terms of septic tank, again, goes back to, if we're not increasing capacity, right? And I can tell you there's some restaurants that are even terrified to change their roof. Okay, change their roof. They're getting hit with insurance cost because they said, if I change my roof, that my insurance company's requiring me, I'm worried that I have to get a permit, and then that triggers something else. So these are the small things that...
We got you. We understand. Thank you both. Thomas Conway.
Good morning, Thomas Conway. I'm a landlord, a business owner. I've been involved with a lot of grease trap systems before, and fundamentally, it's funny. Like during the process, the consent decree always gets shoved down your throat. The consent decree, over and over and over and over, to the extent that I actually read it, which is interesting because, fundamentally what it says is Miami-Dade County, you are effectively, slumlords. You haven't taken care of your sewer systems, and if you don't get your act together, we're going to take it over. That's my interpretation of it. And so, this operating document got put in place, and to your point, Commissioner Regalado, a lot of the infrastructure burden was shifted away from the county and towards these small businesses, which is absurd. But if we're in it, let's do it efficiently, right? So, at its core, this is an engineering matter, period. Hard stop. That's it. Anything that's not engineering should not be a part of the equation. For example purposes, you have a piece of equipment, you have this system, you have load, what's going into it, and you have the capacity of it. It is a simple engineering calculation. That's it. Is the load less than the capacity? If so, it works. It's engineering, right? It's nothing more than that. And so why Durham has evolved into, all these other, they have their finger in absolutely everything. And if at the end of the day, the objective is to keep grease out of the system, out of the public system, focus on the engineering. You have demand, you have capacity. If your capacity is greater than your demand, that's it. And so as my engineers and I draw our plans, we have the mathematical capability to like measure this. And we're able to solve these problems in a matter of minutes. And if, we have any questions, oftentimes we call the manufacturer of the system, they opine and it's done. So what takes us 12 to 18 minutes takes the county 12 to 18 months, and it makes absolutely no sense. Part of the reason why it takes so long, by way of example, is, somehow, some way, Durham has the ability to opine on land use matters. So, for example, if two buildings that are next to each other, owned by the same person under different entities, wants to use a single grease trap system, you have to go through a unity of title process with Durham. Well, that's interesting because at the municipal level, you might have to go through a covenant in lieu process. So at the municipal level, you're going through a covenant in lieu because you have two different named entities. But at the county level, you have to go through a unity of title. What does that have to do with the calculation of grease going in and out? Absolutely nothing. So if we're going to solve problems, let's focus on the problem and let the other departments handle what they need to handle. The redundancies of review is unnecessary. You have load, you have capacity, that's it. It takes 15 minutes to figure out.
Thank you very much. And you bring up a good point. Time is money, so I'm going to ask you guys to, if you can, within the 3 minutes, and I'm asking the guys behind me to run the clock. Felix Bendersky. But thank you for those points.
And I'll give it, it's like an electrical panel.
Come on up, because if not, that way I want to get you on the record. I don't want you to.
To give it additional context, it's like an electrical panel. You have demand, you have capacity. There's not some mere, magical agency that you have to go to figure out what it is. You submit your plans to the municipal, agency. They interface with FPL, and you're done.
Gotcha.
Good morning, everybody. Just want to thank everybody in this room right out the gate for getting us this far. I know this is definitely not an easy subject to talk about, and is definitely a lot of waste of a lot of paperwork and clerical work, but I really do appreciate that we're even at this point talking about it, while in the last couple of years, everybody's been, suffering over it. So my name is Felix Bendersky, and I own F&B Hospitality Brokerage, and I represent most of the restaurants in Miami-Dade County. Obviously, I'm the one that watches the restaurant sign leases never make it to opening, only because they don't know how to navigate the system. They think they're buying a restaurant or being reassigned a restaurant when they didn't expect the grease trap situation. Everybody here knows that something needs to be done. I'm not here to cry about it. We're here to come up with some solutions. So here we go. First going is one of the biggest complaints I get from restaurants is the multiple offices. That's what one of the deal breakers is, where, it should be, just one office, one reviewer, same thing, cuts the time down tremendously. The second, which I think is really important, some sort of TUP, temporary use permit for a TCO. Once the grease trap is installed, many of the times, a lot of these restaurants are waiting another 6-7 months to actually get that final paperwork approved. Now, if it's being done properly with proper engineers and properly by code, a TUP TCO should definitely solve a lot of that bleeding. It could save them 6-7 months of paying rent, which I think would be huge. Next being, GDO permits. GDO permits are only $65, $75 a year. When I reassign leases, first question, is your GDO permit updated? With that, a lot of restaurants are able to reassign leases. When they hear how much the price of that fee is, they're like, oh, that's it? Okay, we can absolutely pay that. If you need more money for inspectors in the city, that's definitely the way to go. You can double that number, you can triple that number. That will get you bodies of inspectors on the street. Third being, sorry, one second. I used to own a grease trap cleaning company, and since 2020, the dumping fees at the wastewater facility have gone up 35%. The reason why, sorry, I'm just going to take one more time.
Go ahead and finish.
The reason why a lot of the restaurants are not getting the traps cleaned as much as they should, and the reason why a lot of these situations are happening is partially that. If we can reduce the price on the wastewater dumping, the grease trap cleaning companies can pass that savings on to their customers, some who have to get it pumped every month for the smaller traps, and some who are spending thousands and thousands more dollars off of their bottom line than they should. Right now, the margins are razor thin. Guys, we live in the greatest city, and right now the message has been the last couple of years that Miami-Dade is not open for business. We need to show everybody why Miami hospitality is the greatest city in the world. And there's obviously more things that we can do. We'll save it for another time, but really think that there are solutions. We can do something, and just want to thank everybody again for getting us to the goal line.
Thank you very much, Felix. Andrew Platt.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Andrew Platt. I reside at 16030 Northwest 83rd Avenue. I am here, and I thank you guys for coming together as a board, even though it's a sunshine meeting, especially the county, the director, the team from Durham, Wausau. Everybody's here, and I think I've met with everybody in this room individually or in some capacity over the last couple of years. So thank you for that. And I think what we need to do here, right, is this is not a one-size-fits-all approach that was put into the consent decree, right? So you have high grease producers, low grease producers, extreme grease producers, all of these things, and we know that. So one of the biggest challenges that we do face in the county is certain parts of the FOG program, especially at the airport, falls under its own rules, and there's subsections within Section 24. I've brought that up to different county employees, and they brought it up to some of you sitting on the dais today. And what we need to do is, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's a one-size needs to go to everyone. So if you have a smoothie shop, which I see there's a lot of operators, or an acai bowl restaurant, or even a wing restaurant, the systems are the same, and obviously Durham may come up and say, well, there's different capacities and different flow rates and different things, but effectively it is a three-phase system. So if we can take an approach that, one, we all can appreciate this, that the wastewater part of Durham, or the GDO or FOG program, is understaffed, right? Felix brought up increasing fees. If we were able to increase the amount of reviewers or inspectors looking at this file by increasing the permit fee by 10%, 20%. If you took it from $100 to $160 a year, and there's 9,000 GDO active permits in Miami-Dade County, that is nearly $900,000 in revenue coming into the tax basin. How many reviewers or inspectors can we add to the system? How many people order from Uber Eats the $12 cheeseburger, but by the time it hits your American Express, it was $22? It's convenience, it's time, it's money. People can appreciate. We have septic issues, Commissioner Regalato's favorite topic. We have other issues that are a lot greater than us. We have malls that are being fined because the mall owns the grease trap. We have people who aren't pumping out because they can't afford it. But at the end of the day, we have to do something that works for Miami-Dade County. And what does that mean? By taking a pragmatic approach, instead of a one-size-fits-all, doing a one-size-fits-your category. Right? If I need to have a GB75B in the ground because I'm serving acai bowls and smoothies, why does another restaurant that has 40 seats with fried chicken, alitas de pollo, masita de puerco, yuca, fried this, that, have the same system? I have to pump out and spend $350 a quarter for somebody to stick a vacuum. Mr. Gazatua talked about technology in Spain and Europe and South America that can aerate and basically destroy the grease before it enters our system. The other thing that we need to employ is we had somebody, when this consent decree was in place, we had Carlos Jimenez, who is now our U.S. representative sitting as the county mayor. Let's employ him, his team, to advocate for us at the federal level in Washington, D.C., to go to the EPA and say, help us. Because Miami-Dade County is not different than any other county in Miami-Dade or in the state of Florida. Yes, we have the Biscayne Aquifer. Monroe County is part of the Biscayne Aquifer, and they just now got new legislation into their fog or waste oil treatment. So what we need to do is, as a board, create this tiered system, low, medium, and high, right? Go back to the low grease producers to the above ground. Shear makes a 99.9% efficient above ground grease trap system that is allowed in Minneapolis, Toronto, and in Miami-Dade County. Those three municipalities and cities are the ones that have the most stringent wastewater policies. So let's take a picture out of their book. Let's take a page out of the airport that allows people to go above ground and let low grease producers be above ground instead of being underwater in finances. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. I like that, impassioned and informed, which is good. Double eyes. So next will be Abe Ng from Sushi Maki. Abe, you know your handwriting was almost as bad as mine. I just want you to know that. But
thank you. Abe Ng from Sushi Maki and Canton Restaurants. Been serving Miami-Dade County for over 25 years. Family started Canton over 50 years ago. And my point of view, you know, not to repeat what anybody else says, is a story from a restaurant that we had in Miami-Dade, and we've been open there for over 20 years. And there was a breach that was on the side of the tank. It was repaired. An engineer certified that it was holding water and that the grease was being trapped, but the rigidity of the policy was that the tank had to be replaced. So we went and tried to talk to several departments, and at the end of the day, we ended up having to replace the grease trap. There was so much value destruction that happened, digging it up, tens of thousands of dollars. And what is the heroic goal? Is it to keep grease out of the system? And this is a fix that in my career has often been done. As long as you can get an engineer to sign and seal that the grease trap is holding, it was accepted. So I think that seems and feels like a common sense approach. So existing grease traps, there was no change, no remodeling, no adding of seats, patio, none of that was done. It was the same exact use.
thank you very much. And those are the type of stories that bring to light the issue. Howard Raphael. By the way, one thing, Howard, before the individuals that have spoken are in all parts of the county, north, south, central, west. Go ahead, Howard.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for taking up this important item. Specifically, I saw this on social media, and it just hit me. I'm like, I am actually going through this right now. I'm currently in the process of opening our second Tropical Smoothie Cafe in Cutler Bay, and I was literally right in the middle of trying to figure out how do we get through this this checklist of going through WASA and grease trap, and I'm wondering, why is it so complicated and where's the roadmap? So to kind of touch on some of what has been said by Felix and Andrew, first of all, thank you so much for bringing this up and really fighting for this. But we need to have simplification is what we're looking for, just as business owners, just to be pro-business, to get us open as quick as possible. When we're dealing with our landlords and trying to figure out, we have a short period of time where we have to get open before we have to start paying rent. So when we get bogged down from technicalities, dealing with the permitting and inspections and going back and forth, it's just not clear. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I flew in this morning just to make sure that I was here to hear, so you could hear my voice as well. But we're literally at the end, opening in Cutler Bay, and it's become problematic, at least in trying to figure out the right ways to get things done. So a clear roadmap would, I think, help all future businesses to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you for taking the time to come down from Raleigh. Is there anybody else that would like to speak at this time on any of these issues? Come on up. Maria, good to see you. Your name and address.
Likewise, Maria Prado. I am with Miami International Mall. I'm with the Simon Property Group. I really appreciate it, what you're doing and what the commission is doing, and to listen to all the experts, because these guys really deal with a lot of the stuff that we get to see. But I want to talk to you a little about the mom and pop and how it's impacting some of the smaller businesses too. And we understand the need to have this. We're not disputing the need to be able to have this code and being able to work with the county on these things. But there's some stuff that doesn't make sense to the smaller business. And it's really affecting how businesses operate in Miami and if they want to come to Miami to do business, because it's so costly with this issue of the whole DERM. And I'll give you 2 examples. I have 2 kiosks. One sells hot dog, the other one was doing empanadas, and they were all pre-cooked. They came in, they did their annual inspections. Requirement is that they have to install a grease trap. A grease trap is running in the area that they're in for a kiosk for about $40,000, $50,000 to $60,000. A business in 1 year cannot absorb that with a deadline of put it in place for 180 days or we're going to close you. This is, and for you to understand, these are businesses that have been established. They've been there for years, working off a 2-compartment sink, you know, doing, what is it the hot dog is doing for grease? It's condiments, mayo, you know, and it's become that type of issue for us. In addition to that, the process that we see as far as time consuming is the inspections when they're coming onto properties like our centers, like regional malls, that we have communal systems that are connected. 20 people, you know, 20 different businesses are loading their grease into our system. We're cleaning it. When they are coming out, they're giving violations to every single one of these tenants in the common area. They're not talking to management or treating malls different than they are businesses out there. And when we talk about our process, we're cleaning and we're taking responsibility for that process. They're literally asking every one of our tenants to take our information, our vendors, what we're doing, and to submit it into the computer system, or they're going to be able, you know, they're going to get fines. And it just goes and escalates into this whole thing of layers and layers of paperwork. My request has been, allow us to be the point person to submit this paperwork. One entry applies to everybody that's tied to this. They're not able to do this, is what they tell me. And the thing is that we're not just one mall. It's Simon, and we have many malls, and we're doing this in many places. It would save you so much time to allow us to do this, because they don't have to go and spend a whole week inspecting tenants that are not cleaning their grease traps, because we're responsible for it. And I think that's an area that we need to look at, is the efficiency of the process, because we're trying to treat everybody the same. And there's no way to budge within that system, because the code is the code, and they're unable to change that. So I leave it in your hands, and hopefully you guys can think of a better way, and anything that we can do to help and explain what we do and how we work with the rest of the group, we appreciate it. But we really do not want to put small businesses out of business. They're the core. And we want people to come to Miami and do business with us, not tell us that it's so hard to open a business here, especially in the food category, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. If there's nobody else, then I'm Commissioner Regalado. Oh, there's one more. Come on up. We got one more person. That's why we're here. We want to hear you.
Good morning. Good morning.
For the name and address for the record.
It's Smoothie Squad, located on UFC Kendall, UFC Kendall, on 88th and 107th. I'm the owner of Smoothie Squad, a small bar located inside UFC Gym Kendall. We focus on healthy smoothies and acai bowls. Our business doesn't cook food, use fryers, or generate grease the way traditional restaurants do. We mainly blend fruit, ice, protein powder, and try our best to use plant-based ingredients. Because of that, requiring a grease trap similar to a restaurant creates a financial heavy burden for a small business like ours. We are currently on a 6-month extension with DERM. I'm simply asking the county to consider a more reasonable solution for low grease trap businesses like ours. We want to fully comply with the regulations, but in a way that makes sense for the type of operation we run. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioner, if there's nobody else, I know we've got some, I've got some comments, but certainly I know you've been waiting and you heard the the
You want to
magic
start?
words.
I can start or you can start. I got my notes.
No, you can go. You can go. You heard the magic words. I knew that was going to trigger you.
No, it's a trigger. It's a trigger.
So it's okay. It triggers a lot of us. So it's okay.
I'm going to talk about a lot of other things before I get to septic tanks. So I took notes on some of the points that were raised. I'm going to start with the easy ones, and then we'll get to the ones that are a little bit more complicated. But I want to thank everyone that came down, and I want to thank you for bringing solutions too, right? Because a lot of times, especially when it comes to this area, like all we get is complaints and no solutions. So I really want to thank everyone that spoke, because I think you all came with thoughtful ideas, right? That we can consider. So I'll take up the easy one. Carlos mentioned access to the information. So two ideas, okay? The idea of us doing like a website, well, first, I think we all agree that there's not enough information when someone goes to rent, right? They don't know about the grease trap. Unfortunately, they are educated about the grease trap way late into this. They've already negotiated a lease term, right? So we'll all agree on that. Now, my concern, we could house the information, but I know our county attorneys are going to say that we don't want to be responsible for the veracity of that information, right? So we can always house information, but we're always going to disclaim it, right? And also, how do we get people to give us information? Commissioner Bermudez, you and I worked on, it was your item, and we talked about it a long time, creating the website so that people would put, their financials, right? And we included HOAs, because obviously we have condos, but then we have a lot of HOA issues in your district and in my district. And then, created the website, everybody went through it. Then how do you make people comply, right? Because it's always the bad actors that don't comply. The good actors will comply. The bad actors are the ones that don't comply. So then are we going to fine them? How do we extract that fine? So there's all that. I'm not saying that we can't do it. It just gives Lourdes like another thing to do. And there is some issues with maintaining the veracity of that. And there's always going to be like a disclaimer. Okay. I looked at that when I was working at first on septic tanks. And what we did is we passed on that obligation to the property appraiser. So we actually brought an item that said the property appraiser has to list the septic tanks and the permits. And the reason I did that is because people are more likely when they're leasing or buying a property to go on the property appraiser site. You would have to know that there is this site for septic tanks so that you could go into an RER, and look for it there. So I believe that all these things are better on the property appraiser side, right? But again, that creates another thing for the property appraiser to do. And I know the guy well, but I would have to talk to him to see if he's cool with that. He's a great guy, so I think he'll be for it, because that site actually gets more traction than any other site, any other government site. That is the site that gets the most traction. So that's the place where I think you should house that information. What can the board do? When I dealt with this on the septic side, I brought an item that required a rider. So right now, if you go to buy a property, because we had a lot of people who were buying residential homes, and the way they found out they had a septic tank is when they went to apply for a permit, and all of a sudden they're like, what do you mean I can't build there? And you're like, yeah, you have a septic tank and that's a berm. So, the rider was important. Yes, there might be some disclosure somewhere inside the document, but having a separate rider that they have to read and sign has really been impactful, and it gives people information. So I think the easiest thing we could do is a rider. I don't think that that's onerous at all, and in that rider, we could specify the age of it, right? And the status and the permit number, so that way, when you lease a property or you buy a property, at least you have some information about this infrastructure that you now have inherited, right? Because a lot of people don't even know like where to start. Yeah. So our rider, so we do have a rider for this, and it's for lease or just for sale?
Sale and lease.
Okay, so why aren't people getting that rider? And what's the issue? When was that done?
The ordinance was passed in 2023,
Okay,
and the rider's limited. It doesn't require all the information you just said. So, basically it says land involved in this transaction has a fog generator. It provides the code citation, provides a definition of fog generator, and kind of gives a a caveat that regulations do apply to it. And
that's kind of useless. I mean, obviously you're buying a restaurant, you have a fog. Like that's the state of your fog is really what you need to know, right? Not that you have one. I mean, okay, so the county has a start, right? So I think, Commissioner Bermudez, we should probably amend that and provide more information. That's an easy one, right? That's not Roy. That's gonna give us heartache, right? It's even easier that it already exists. So we have to amend that. And then the other one that came up is the above ground. So I think the above ground is a good idea. I think the fact that we do it at the airport allows us some information, right? So to staff, what is our appetite for doing in limited situations on above ground? And how is it that we do it at the airport? And how could we kind of parlay that to other areas? Because we have a lot of acai bowls, a lot of juicers, a lot of places that they're not cooking chicharrones, folks.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Morning.
So, to the point of above ground fog devices, those are allowed. And when there is no option with respect to space, the code does allow for that type of situation. I think there was a couple mentions about capacity and whether the type of flow and how big. Those are all things that are accounted for in a part of the design and the construction. But yes, what you just said and what we see at the airport, for many reasons, it is allowed by code today.
That's great.
Okay, so
Yeah, it makes common sense, which sometimes is not too common, means that if we allow it at the airport, then, right? So
right, so
those types of,
for the folks that are here, like how can they do that? Because we've talked about above ground. It's come up a few times. Why aren't they applying for it?
So I'm just looking behind me really quick to see. Okay, so Eddie's here and Lourdes are here. So yes, that is something that can be, it's a case by case. So we gotta, we by the county side, when they're looking at it at construction or whatever the input into the system is where they're evaluating these things, these are things that they consider, that they can consider and can apply. They would just have to look at it on a case by case basis.
but it's not applied right now to the Sire smoothie bowls, right?
It can be. I know of one particular site that can be utilized unless it's that they actually do have space somewhere to put it in. The simple answer is yes, it can be applied. We would have to look at the specifics of that particular application.
I think one of the things that we could do is possibly look at legislation, and I think Roy will get into this a little bit later, that we can actually either be flexible enough to give you guys flexibility, because truthfully, it shouldn't be based just on space. It's also on use. That's my opinion, and I think that's where this whole, it's kind of not matching up. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't maybe even look at, and I don't know, we'll talk to the attorneys, but maybe look at what we can do to amend if there is a way to do something legislatively that will give you the option to not have to interpret it as, let's call it, give you the flexibility to be able to take this that is being done at the airport, because I don't see the difference.
Well, this goes back to the county's inherent desire to have people invest in infrastructure. So if you buy a space and it has one of these systems and you have a system for like a restaurant, but you're not running a restaurant, the county's gonna say, fix that system, because they want you to fix the infrastructure. So I think we need to amend the rule to say that it is driven by use and not by size. And that means that they could discard the fact that they have space for a, let's say, Lexus of a grease trap, but they only need like, a Fiat. Like, can you just let them have a Fiat, right? Like, they don't have to invest in the monstrosity and fix it. They're not going to be using it, Now, that means that space has now limited its use, and future users will have to figure out what to do with that. But that's like somebody else's problem.
So if I may,
Yeah.
Commissioner, I can give you a little bit of background, and I'm going to try not to go into the rabbit hole. When this fog ordinance was established and enacted, it was very prescriptive. If I tell you prescriptive, of all the codes that I know in all portions of Chapter 24, this is the one that is the most prescriptive, to the point of, the amount of days. I heard the magic number of 6 months. It's written so specific and so prescriptive that it does not give staff the flexibility to allow anything else. One of the things you touched upon, which I would say from my technical background, do not disagree, is that we don't have a manner to categorize. Actually, Andrew did a great job in explaining the same model of grease trap for a smoothie shop and another one for that generates more grease. At the end of the day, they're looking at the output, and the code today does not read that way. I believe that we can come up with those relief points in the code today to make those kind of recommendations to both the state and the federal government, that we believe that we could still protect the infrastructure, the county's well, not just the county, but all the utilities infrastructure, but still provide some relief points to ensure that grease doesn't go down the system. So, those are all good points. I think this would be something that we would compile and obviously share with the administration and with the commission.
I got one more question for you real quick. These above ground systems, do they need to, is the EPA or the Florida Department of Environmental Protection involved in any way when you have that above ground system?
When you mean, are they involved, how so?
Is there any, besides are we interpreting that because, let's exclude the consent decree.
Okay.
Is there any requirement that they go to to either of these entities?
They do not. What the consent decree did is essentially put the county on notice that we had to, comply with XYZ, requirements. Right. One of those requirements was to enact a fog study. As a result of that fog study, the ordinance was born. That ordinance was approved by both the EPA and DEP. And really, that is the only thing that they have, to call it anything else is the hook. The code itself is where they're hands off as long as that code is intact. If there's any change, that's the only, entry back, is that they would have to approve those changes. But the day-to-day operations and what's going on, they do not get involved. The only thing they get involved with, and you look at it, if there is a sanitary sewer overflow caused by a fog break or something to that effect, that's where they get involved, and they find the utility, the appropriate utility, not just WASD, but the 15 other ones, whoever's managing the system.
Okay, thanks. Before Roy, Commissioner Regalado, you have anything else? We'll go.
I have two more things, and I got to go soon, but I have two more things. And listen, I think since this is a sunshine meeting, I think you and I could work on this together.
We can.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one. So we'll get into the holes and all that other fun stuff later. But right now, we'll just say on the record that we'll work together. But there's two other things that were mentioned that I think are important, and that is the idea of a separate section for malls. So. The issue there is, like, if they're going to be responsible, like, how do we hold them responsible, right? So that's kind of the idea. What are your thoughts on that? Because that came up with Simon's, right? Come on down.
If it's okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely have opinions on it. there is something that, she brings up, Simon Mall is actually a great example of that. Systematically in our permitting system, you can create and I'm gonna probably mess up the terminology, but a generator and a, Gallo, can you help me out? Generator and? An operator. That's a perfect example of a generator and operator. And actually most malls work that way. There's a fog system that services the entire mall, and then you have individual tenants, i.e. a food court, right? Every single one of them do not have a fog system, but they essentially buy into the fog system. So and I think her name was Maria, brought up is an excellent point. She is absolutely right. Simon Mall is responsible for the farm system for the mall, and the tenants are essentially just the components that go in there. And you can link those permits that way, and then have the operator be responsible for essentially everything. And then on the regulatory side and compliance side, you just make sure that all the tenants are doing exactly what they said they were going to be doing. But yes, that's a very good point. I believe it just requires some tweaks to our current IT system, but it is absolutely something that makes sense.
So that is something that we can do without going to the consent decree. Because what I'm thinking is,
Yes,
okay, what
correct.
can we do without the consent decree? Without the consent decree, we can fix the rider. Without the consent decree, we can talk about a website. And without the consent decree, we can fix your little technical problem over there at Simon's, right?
I'm going to say that even the code today keeps that relationship. It speaks to that and allows for that. So we wouldn't have to change anything, I don't think.
Okay, so it's just the IT part. We just got to figure out the IT part.
Yes.
And obviously educate other people about it, because like if you own like a strip mall, right? You could also do that. Technically, right?
Yes, on a strip mall, you could do that if they have the same type of system, correct?
Yeah. So, okay. And then the last one, which is, I love the idea of reuse, a little bit more complicated. But the idea of collecting the grease, and selling it to someone and reusing it, that's a little bit more complex. Obviously, that requires a little bit more regulation. Thoughts on that? I know, I saw your face. I saw your face when it happened.
So you may or may not know there's many types of grease.
Yes.
Grease is a commodity in all sense. It's funny, we talk about yellow grease and, fritura and, maduros. So yellow grease is a commodity. And I think many of the restaurant owners here know that it's a commodity. It's collected. You guys, I'm the guy that goes to a restaurant and then takes his entire family down the alleyway to see things. So I show them, you see, here's the yellow grease container, because there's actually value. It's a commodity, can be reused. There's that could also be said for other types of grease. I think Carlos mentioned an idea that the late great Carlos Hernandez probably contemplated one day. Actually, he looked at me and said, I should turn my swimming pool into a grease pool because of biodiesel.
Right.
My kids couldn't swim in it, but I understood it. I think there is a concept there. It's an innovative concept. Does the code speak to that today? No. But if you turn anything into a commodity, it actually fixes any problem that, anything you could keep out of the system would be.
But does that trigger the consent decree, or is that something that we could do separate and apart? I think
separate and apart.
Separate and apart.
Yeah,
so I think that's something that we could do.
The code today, all it really cares about is keeping the grease out of the system. If you come up with another market that is a brown grease market or any kind of grease market, I think that is something that is fair game.
Well, you know how I feel about waste, so I'm all in. All right, so Madam Attorney, we'll put a hold on that and we'll do it. That one sounds like a fun one. All right, and then obviously septic sewer, I could go on for another 2 hours, but I gotta go and.
We'll do it. Just one quick thing, and before we, Roy and Commissioner Regalado's here, maybe I have no problem with co-priming it so we can work on all these things together. I just want to point out, by way, Lourdes and Eddie, thank you for being here. So you don't get sensitive on me. Thank you very much for being here. The only thing I want to say, and Commissioner Regalado's touched on a lot of very important points. I want to thank all of staff for being here. Time is money. We're both lawyers, and as lawyers, we know that 6 months can kill a small business. That's just the way life is. And we've got to do everything to make sure small businesses survive in our community. Technology is key across the board.
okay? And not just our own IT department, which I think Commissioner Regalado and I have commented on in the past, but there's a lot that we can do. And certainly technology, as Carlos mentioned, that is being used in other places. And, one size does not fit all. I think that's the other thing that's come out of this, whether it's at International Mall, whether it's any of the Simon malls, or whether it's in a side bowl, listen, this is a great opportunity for us to do what we should be doing, which is think out of the box to make government better and to work with the community that's impacted by this. The end result will still be the same. Okay, it's still going to be environmentally, we're going to protect the environment, we're going to be environmentally sensitive. But Roy, I think this gives us, and to the staff and also to the attorneys, this is a perfect example of something that is really impacting businesses in Miami-Dade County. And we cannot not be up to the task as public policymakers, as administrators, as lawyers, to do the best for our community. So Roy, I know by the way, I thank you because you've been open to these discussions. Is there anything before we wrap up that you wanted to say? I know we've gave you a lot of information, but.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing the subject to the forefront. I would like to share with you that Mayor Cava has directed me to oversee a process of reviewing the consent order, reviewing the code to determine, what could be done to make it better and still protect the environment that we're supposed to be doing. Along the way of what we've done so far, I can share with you some of my interpretations of the consent order and the code and what we're working towards. I mean, obviously, yes, one of our speakers said it very clearly. The reason we're under a consent order is many years ago, probably 30 or more, it was determined Miami-Dade County wasn't doing a good job managing its sewer system and had too many overflows, and that's the genesis of the consent order. And included in that is a requirement for fog, but part of that requirement is at our South Dade wastewater treatment plant, we're going through building a fat oil and grease treatment train right now at a cost of about $50 million to our ratepayers that will only treat fat oil and grease. It's under construction, probably a year away from opening. So that's one thing. But the consent order did require the county to develop a code and develop a plan, and the county did. And it was approved by the consent order, both the state and the feds. Now, as I interpret the consent order, it anticipated that the fog rules from time to time would need to be reviewed and changed based on practice and technology, and specifically says in the consent order they do not consider changes in the fog to be material for the purpose of the consent order, and the county is authorized to submit requests if we want to change things, the way things are done, submit information. There's a prescribed way for us to do that. We submit that to the EPA for their review. So I know there's a system in place, and we just need to identify all the things that we think we could do that would help our businesses and still protect our environment, and that's exactly the charge of duty Mayor Cava has given me to oversee, and we're so happy that that the board here is going to help push that along with us, because it's certainly going to require legislative change. We can come up with the recommendations. That'll be Durham's role, but this board would have to adopt them, and then we would have to submit them to EPA for their approval.
Thank you. Mr. Chair? No, I was just going to say, thank you, Roy. And look, I think we should also tell the attorneys that we want our staff to be able to meet in the sunshine too, so that we can move it along faster, right? So I think the two of us, can do it, but then they can also do it. And that way, to the point of, people have had enough. I look forward to the administration's recommendations, but I think these are some easy things that we could start with. Like, I don't think we have to wait around for a memo. I think we just get going. Sure. And I think that there's some things here that at least can alleviate the situation. I don't like doing piecemeal stuff, but in this case, I think we just start somewhere and start moving the ball forward and give everyone a little bit of relief. So thank you again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I think staff has heard that clearly. And I thank, first of all, I want to say one last thing before I thank you again.
As I understand it, WASD and SPD is collaborating with the Innovation Authority on a fog challenge, so to speak. It's not official yet, but just want to let you know. So it's to find new technologies to help our small businesses and county infrastructure. So I'm sure, Roy, when we're ready for that challenge, we'll let everybody know. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be out here today. I know it's not easy to be here at 10 o'clock in the morning on a weekday, all the way from Raleigh in some cases, flying in. Thank you so much. It is your input that leads to change, and this is a perfect example of it. So on behalf of myself, Commissioner Regalado, and I think all of our colleagues, we certainly, and I'm sure the mayor, thank you so much for being here. And you know your business is better than we do, so that's why we should listen to you. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a great remainder of the week.
Thank you.